You're listening to Binjang 91.5, and it's time for a tantalising edition of Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson, I believe.
Tony, getting that alliteration going early in the morning. Good to see.
Well, tantalising. I got this email to say it was tantalising this week. I thought it was tantalising every week.
Yeah, true.
But it must be up another notch this week. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get started. Now, this is a big problem for you, I know, Mathew. Struggling to remember your passwords, and I'm sure you've worked out a way to solve that issue yourself. But in the meantime, Microsoft knows that this is a big problem for just about everybody, including myself, and they want you or us to ditch our password. So how can that actually work? Because I know that's where they're going.
It sounds crazy, doesn't it? How can you possibly exist in today's environment without having thousands of passwords to remember, Tony? It does sound incredible. Yes. But it obviously is a huge problem. People having to remember passwords, having to change those passwords on a regular basis, having all the rules associated with password, uppercase, lowercase, other characters, numbers. It gets so complicated. And so what ends up happening is people often share the same password across a number of accounts. Hackers can work out that information about a password, and then they get access to all of your accounts. So Microsoft is saying, we're coming up with a method that we're going to ditch the password altogether. You're not going to require a password. This sounds like some sort of fantasy land, Tony. What are they thinking? How can you possibly survive without a password? What they're going to do is they're going to work on a couple of different options. So you could actually use the Microsoft Authenticator app or something like a biometric, so either eye or fingerprint, some sort of biometric test to let you get into the various things that you have with Microsoft. So this would include things like Outlook, for example, or OneDrive, or logging onto your computer. Microsoft is of the belief that if they can get rid of passwords, it will actually make it more secure for you to use their programs and your computer using their programs, essentially. So the idea would be you might have the Authenticator app. You are about to log into Outlook or OneDrive or your computer, and the Authenticator app, for example, on your phone, would give you the code that you would need to type in. The Authenticator app is unique to your phone. It obviously has linkage to your information on there. And so it's using that sort of information to allow you to log in. The same with biometrics. It will use your fingerprint or use your eye retinal scan to actually get in, or even a facial scan like you do with phones. So the idea here is to get away from passwords, to use other ways of getting in. One of the bits of information that Microsoft gave as part of this to show how vulnerable we are is that there are 579 password attacks every second, 18 billion annually password attacks. And that's because people use such basic information or information about themselves or information you can glean off social media, for example, to actually use that to get into your accounts. You still see common passwords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that type of thing, which obviously makes it very easy for hackers to get into your information. So this is the first step, Tony, I believe, in lots of organisations saying, ditch the password, we'll use some other form of authentication.
Well, amen to that. Now, it raises a few questions, though, and one of those is, and this is a big problem as well, when someone passes away and they've got all these passwords on things, no one they can access that person's stuff anymore. And the other question I have is with biometric, whether it's eyes or whether it's with facial recognition, are they able to use photos to get around that? Photos of a person?
Yeah, initially that was one of the things that people could do. They could take a photo and it was good enough. But now you've got depth sensors on the front of your phone, for example, that essentially will look at the 3D image of your face. So now to get past facial recognition, someone would need to go, and maybe they've already done it, Tony, need to go and make a 3D image of your face to have actually that ready to put in front of a camera to show. So not just a simple photo, a bit like you might see in the movies in something like a Mission Impossible, where they'll have a complete 3D mock-up of someone's face. That's a fair bit of trouble to go to get into someone's information.
Yeah, but here's the other question I asked was about what happens when someone passes away, and you might have a dozen different passwords for your phone and your computer and your banking accounts, you name it. What can you do there?
Just keep their head around for a few weeks, Tony.
Yeah. So there's no solution to that, you reckon?
Look, I think there are solutions. Chop off your finger and take that away and use it to get into various things. So there's no there's no easy solution. Obviously, when something like that does happen, your first thought isn't, how do I get into their stuff? It's something that you would think about weeks later when you're saying to basically sort out all the information that's there. So the idea of this sort of authentication in my mind would be an authenticator app would be a backup. So rather than a biometric scan, authenticator app on someone's phone. So if you had access to that person's phone, unfortunately, somewhere along the line, you're still going to have some form of password. So to get into the authenticator app, to get into some part of information, there's probably going to be a password tucked away. The biggest issue is the day-to-day use of those passwords and how people make them easy to remember. So you can have a very complicated password to get into the back end of the authenticator app or to change some of the biometric testing and have that one password to use as a master password.
Then, in which case you could use that if you did die and you had somewhere tucked away in a safe, all your passwords properly organised, then that solves the problem.
Well, one of the issues that you raised, Tony, which is quite interesting, is that probably in your will you would need to get to the point where you might put the master password for your account so that when you do die and at the reading of your will, the password is given there so that your relatives can get access to your information. So it's something that probably hasn't been thought of before.
Well, you couldn't even make that public, could you? I mean, it would have to go to the people that are the beneficiaries.
Correct.
Or the person who's organising everything for the beneficiaries.
Yeah.
So the executor. Anyway, moving on. So everyone's tired of plugging in their charger. If you're like me, I just leave the thing on all the time and whack the phone in and out when I need it. I don't bother turning it off. It's too much of a hassle because there's other things on my power board as well. So why not just sit your phone on your desk where X marks the spot and do a wireless charging of your devices instead? Well, we know we've got that, but how easy can we make it? Obviously, if you don't have a device that can do it, you can't do it anyway. But there's add-ons, isn't there?
Correct. And there are some tables made by various companies now, tables, desks, that have got wireless charging built in. So you've got certain spots on the desk that you can sit your phone and it starts wirelessly charging. So that sounds fantastic. But many have already got desks or have already got our furniture set up. So we don't want to go and replace all of our furniture just to use that. Well, a new device has come out now that will allow you to do that wireless charging and do it with something that will go through a desk, through timber, through plastic, obviously not a metal desk, and allow you to do that just by sticking the wireless charger underneath the desk. And it's built not to have the wireless charging signal directly on the pad as would normally be the case. So normally when you'd sit your wireless charging phone on your wireless charger, it has to be in contact with it, it has to be sitting directly on it. This is designed to put the charging field above the charger itself. So anywhere between 8 to 22 millimetres above it, in other words, the thickness of a desk, for example, you stick this underneath the desk automatically at that distance, 8 to 22 millimetres above the desk, it will give the charging field there. So essentially what you do is you stick the charger underneath your desk, put a little X on the desk so you know where the charging spot is, and sit your phone there and it will start charging automatically. It would seem like magic to people. You could have someone come in, sit down at your desk, you say, just sit your phone there. They'd sit it there randomly on this desk where you would know where it would be, and that would start charging. So again, that convenience of wireless charging is absolutely there.
Yes, I can see, Matthew, how we'll all be charging ahead with that one very soon.
Very good.
And you've been listening to Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson on Binjang 91.5. Stick around for all the great information and news and the great music that's going to follow.
Great. Thanks, Tony.